My name is Roberta Ridley, Chairwoman of the African American Genealogical Society of Fort Wayne. And I welcome you, and I appreciate your patience for today's presentation. We are going to try to capsulize it a little bit better. We're going to be talking about race, slavery, and free Blacks petitions to the Southern courts. And it's a two-part introduction from me, and then a presentation by the Honorable Dr. Al Brothers. He is our Vice Chair of the Society. So we're gonna, for those of you that did not hear the beginnings of it, I hope my memory will work because I didn't exactly write a script for this. We are going to look at the collection in terms of what's available to you here at the Allen County Public Library Genealogy Department, and the books that are available hard copy for you: the guide to the microfilm collection of race, slavery, and free Blacks, with a call number of G as in goat, C as in cat, 975, G as in green, 941 is the guidebook. And the books that follow that help you through the collection, those are the same call number, adding letter A, part A through F. Each one of those constitutes an individual book of its own. So please make a note of that, so when you have the opportunity and privilege to be here at the Allen County Public Library or to access that collection in your own home library, that you do so, because actually being able to have that book guide you through hard copy oftentimes will give you a bit of an advantage. I wanted to stress to you that the reason that this book is so important is because the names that change for us as enslaved people, they were often changed by contract because of enslaved people being loaned out to other enslavers for different tasks based on their skills. These skills were utilized by other enslavers, and during that time period, of course, the original owner is paid a certain fee for the works that the enslaved person is doing. And anything that you can imagine as far as these petitions to the courts do exist. We are talking about individuals who were free and they attempted to enslave them. There are individuals who have been emancipated and not released. There are individuals who, the enslaver themselves, taking cases to the court because of contract violations. They loaned the slave to another enslaver for a specific amount of time. They weren't returned, or in some cases, a woman who was loaned out and they were impregnated, and the person on the contract didn't want to return the woman or the issue from that pregnancy. So when I say anything that you can imagine, that is exactly what I'm talking about. Whether or not this hits your particular genealogical line of ancestors or not, I don't want to say it doesn't matter. It matters a lot, because the more we are enlightened as a people about what has happened in the past as far as our lineage is concerned, the better off we are as we move forward doing the research to know what could happen or what has happened to others who may tie into your family or your community. It's about understanding who we are, why we are, the psychological as well as the emotional impact, as well as how the lineage can be confusing to us. Keeping in mind that quite often the contracted person would require that individual to go under their name, when in fact history is pointing you to another name from the person who received the contract. So as I said, this is two-parted. I wanted you to know about it. There are several situations that can be shared with you. And I think probably what I would like to do is let Dr. Brothers share with you the online access to the information. And then we can talk about some of these cases that are actually notated in this collection. You will be surprised. And then again, maybe not, it's a confirmation. I do believe that that is about as much as I need to share with you. This is a very important collection to me, and I think that is very important to you, whether you know it or not. So I will turn it over to Dr. Brothers.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ridley. It's important to understand what this collection really brings to us. And let me start sharing here. Okay, and again, the topic was race, slavery, free blacks, and court petitions. Now, when we talk about this, you're talking about a collection of over 3,000 petitions to the legislatures and Southern courts. And the time span is from the American Revolution to the Civil War. And again, we're talking about court cases primarily from the 15 slave-holding states. And they cover a wide range of topics: manumission, colonization, religion, laws regarding enslaved people, racial mixing, and others. But again, it also included a wide range of Southerners, including slaveholders and non-slaveholders, blacks and whites, men and women, and those who were enslaved and free. Now, what else did it contain? Guardianship and emancipation petitions, again, depict the association between whites and free blacks, and the divorce petitions provide a picture of slave-holding white women. So again, it's not just the enslaved, but others as well. And these documents really include a rare bibliography and genealogical information about how enslaved people as chattel were sold, conveyed, or distributed as part of their master's estates, and they reveal the impact of market forces on the slave family. Now, there's a project that really makes it digital. And the digital part of it is the fact that you can do it at home. I was doing it at 11 o'clock last night at home, so I can guarantee it can be done. So again, this particular project is called Race and Slavery Petitions, and it offers data on from the 18th and 19th century, and the project contains information on about 150,000 individuals, including slaves, free people of color, and whites. And the data comes from almost 3,000 legislative petitions and almost 15,000 county court petitions. And they really cover a wide range of related documents, including wills, inventories, deeds, bills of sale, depositions, court proceedings, amended petitions, among others. Now, those, as I talk about, are key to our genealogical information about our families. Now, buried in those documents are roughly 80,000 individual slaves, 8,000 free people of color, and 62,000 whites, both slave owners and non-slave owners. Now, one of the unique perspectives of the project is the information on the individual slaves themselves, because this is how you're able to get more information on your ancestors. I did do a search on my ancestors' names, didn't find any. Most of mine migrated north and then to Canada. So consequently, again, they're not in this. I had to check my wife's. This is because her family stayed down in the Virginias and Carolinas. The question I always ask myself is, what states are covered here? Now, you're talking about a period, as was mentioned, in 1775 and 1867, in 15 states and the District of Columbia. And listed of the states: Alabama, Arkansas, Delaware, Florida, Georgia, Kentucky, Louisiana, Maryland, Mississippi, Missouri, North and South Carolina, Tennessee, Texas, and Virginia. So these were really a total of a number of wide-ranging states. Remember, at that time period, there were only 34 states. So consequently, this is the range of states that this covered. Now, I really want to talk to specifically the Race and Slavery Petitions Project, because this is a digital online project itself. Now, this is the front screen. From it itself, it talks about the project in great detail. It also gives you the background information, talks about the record names of individual slaves. And I might point out, when I'll show you some records, it also talks about color. So again, it gives you some kind of descriptions of people involved. I'll do this online in just a few minutes. Now, these are the main topics. Again, slave ownership, change in slave ownership, slaves and slave management, attaining freedom, free people of color, and crime and punishment. So those are the overriding labels associated with this petition. Now, when you search the petition, again, the first way you can do it is by state and by date range. And I'll show you that in a little bit also. So again, I'll show you a state a date range, you'll be able to see what comes up under that particular title. You can also search by name. And again, what I went into as was really mentioned, I went into the books themselves and did find originally, I'll use the term transcriptions. I use that term transcriptions. And again, when I got the name, I went back in here and was able to validate what it was. Now, these are the topics that we talk about under each heading. It'll give you, there's really a wide range of topics that these petitions cover under those major topics. And again, you can see absentee owners, you name it. It's a huge listing of people. And when you go to the website, you can click on any one of those and get additional information. Now, there's also, for all of us, there's always nice to have in the book, like in the table of contents and others, help with searching. There's search techniques. And again, this is just an indication of what that page initially looks like. And I'll again show it to you online. And there's a huge glossary of terms from A to Z. And again, it gives you a more in-depth information about how things were referred to in those documents. Now, as was mentioned by Ms. Ridley, again, one of the things I liked about it when I actually went in and looked at the titles, the first talked about petitions to Southern courts, and again, 75 to 867 Part C talked about Virginia in the date range and Kentucky in the date range. And the next one below was similarly talking about Arkansas, Missouri, Tennessee, and Texas. So again, you get the range of dates associated with those petitions and the guide itself. And there are a total of 6 books, including a separate guidebook. And they are transcribed from the microfilm, as we mentioned, the written documents, and they typically focus on a location, a state, and a date. So again, those are really the basic issues when you look at these books. That's how you do the search. And other books that are not listed here include the District of Columbia, Maryland, and Delaware. I forgot that Delaware was considered a slave state. Let me give you some search examples. And this is one. This is Robert Nelson from the District of Columbia in 1856. I do want to point out that Congress passed an emancipation law abolishing slavery in the District of Columbia on the 16th of April, 1862. Okay, now this is what I did. I put in his name. I had to get it squared away, the last name first. Then he's a petitioner and free person of color and from the District of Columbia. What comes up is a search record. It gives his petition number, the year of the petition, location, state, name, his color, gender, and role in the petition, and his enslavement status. So this is what comes up first. Then when you actually click on the petition number, it expands it. Talks about the circuit court for the District of Columbia and the petition information. This is about a 17-year-old Robert Nelson, a free person of color, who petitions a court by his next friend, Edward Woodland, a free person of color, and he states that he is illegally held in custody as the apprentice of Alfred Jones and a free man of color. He asserts that the indenture on which Jones based his claim is defective, as it was never recorded in the orphans court in a specified amount of time. And the petitioner claims that Jones has treated him with harshness and cruelty, often beating and cuffing him in the most cruel and improper manner. And Nelson states that Jones has failed to provide proper food, clothing, or education, and has never taught him any trade. So what he is seeking? A writ of habeas corpus. So now they had a pretty good idea of what's going on with this particular petition. Now let me show you. Now this is by state. I went into the state of Mississippi for the year 1840 to 1850. And again, if you notice, 230 results in that time period and 25 per page. And I just wanted to show you at least what the page looks like. And we're going to take a look at the first one. Let's see what the first one talks about. Okay. It's in Wilkinson County in the state of Mississippi. The petitioner states that he is the guardian of the 3 minor siblings of his wife, Amanda, William, and Gillian Mitchell. He asks authorization to move the children with their property including 6 slaves, to Louisiana. Among the slaves, only one is an adult. The mother of the minors supports the move, noting that their stepfather is irresponsible and not willing to take charge of her children's slaves. Now, this is a white person asking for, again, for court support. So again, as we mentioned before, it just was not about free blacks or the like at all. What it does show that there's a tremendous depth and breadth to this document. Now, as I go, before I go and actually show you the actual website, I do want to mention that this particular topic is a topic that is new to many of us. Actually, me, I'd never looked at this, but demonstrates the will and determination of people to solve their challenges in the Southern courts. Now, Race and Slavery Petitions Project provides us with a tool. This is a key tool to research and examine those cases from the 15 slaveholding states and the District of Columbia. And the results are rich insight to the times and conditions of people, both enslaved and free, black and white, and men and women seeking justice. Okay. Now, this now is the actual screenshot. And again, this is what you can pick up at home. And what it talks about, it provides information about the project, how it was initiated, how it helps our genealogists, and the part document is that long number that you saw before on the document. That's what it is, and explains how that, in fact, evolves. And so you can search again by name, subjects, help, and then glossary of terms. Let me pull something out here because I've got a few here that I want to look at. You saw the very first one I want to do, search for petitions. And this time we're going to try a different state, Alabama. And interesting enough, I want to try just a little earlier period of time because I want to show you how far back this goes. 1808. Just to 1830. Okay. Then we get down below here and we actually click the search button, and this is what comes up. And you notice it returned 23 results. The first talks about the year in Alabama, 1817, and the abstract talks about a slaveholder, William Burney, was murdered by a slave. He died intestate and one half of his property, including 7 Negroes of different ages and sires, escaped to the territory. Mary Burney, the widow, claimed that the greater part of their property was obtained and accumulated by their joint industry and economy, and asked that the government not deprive an aged widow of property she had labored with her deceased husband to acquire. Now, that's the synopsis. Now, let's take a look at what the part number talks about. Now, this gives you more details. And then again, I'll just show you a couple of, because Roberta has more information on this here. So again, this shows you information on what it was. And again, number of pages, petitioners, and the like. Let's get down a little further here. The cited information of the repository itself. This record was created in 1999. It was updated in 2007. So again, it gives you some insights into what is happening here. I want to do this by name. I had fun over the last couple of days actually taking a look at some of the names here. And I'm going to use Washington, D.C. because that was the state capital. And again, there was a different reference. And my relatives from Virginia actually went to the District of Columbia before the end of the Civil War and established. I'm going to try another name here. Okay. Okay, the last name is Mellon. First name is John and Mary. Petitioners. And I'll leave the slave status unknown. So let's find out who it really was. Okay, the state I'm going to put down here, and it's going to be the District of Columbia. Well, let's see what shows up. Okay, let's go back. It didn't like that. Let me put my name here. I'll just do the last name. Okay, there were two petitions, one by John and one by Mary. And again, this is how you find out about it. And both for white individuals. It talks about the county. Washington, D.C. was considered a county, I guess it was in that time. But the filing date was the 30th of May, 1838. And John and Mary Mellon seek the settlement of an ownership dispute regarding a slave named James, who was delivered to Lewis Piles by George Mellon, deceased father of the petitioners, to secure a debt of $30. Piles, in violation of the agreement, has sold 19-year-old James to William H. Williams, a slave trader, as a slave for life. The petitioners claim that Piles had no right to sell James since the $30 debt had been paid, and since they still have title to James until he reaches the age of 28, after which time he is to be freed. The Mellons seek the return of the slave and an injunction preventing Piles and or Williams from removing or selling James beyond the jurisdiction of the court. Okay, the result, it was dismissed. But it gives you the insight of what can happen. And again, this is just a quick view of a couple of these because, as I mentioned, that Ridley has quite a bit of information in this area. One of the key things I found about it in the District of Columbia were the number of petitions of free people of color in the city who are being sought by slave owners outside the city trying to come in after 1862 and take them out. So again, there are a whole host of those. So again, that's the reason I picked that particular area to give you some insights in terms of what happens. What I'd like to do now is actually turn this back over. And in my chat, shared screen here, and turn this back over to Ms. Ridley because she had some insights and some very interesting stories associated with these events.
Thank you, Dr. Brothers. Always an honor to be able to share the podium or stage, whichever it may be, with Dr. Brothers because of his exquisite method of presentation. I think that the important part for this collection, for all of us, is to understand that there are records that you may not be familiar with. And this grouping is definitely one that many people are not familiar with. It goes along with a comparison to slave narratives. You think about that. Slave narratives are the actual stories from the enslaved individuals, either while they are still enslaved or after emancipation, where they are telling the story of the events that occurred in their lives. In this particular collection, we go a little bit more in depth because of the time period, 1777 to 1867, 100 years, pretty much. And this is all while in bondage that this is taking place. So the importance of this collection, I cannot stress it enough. When we talk, I gasped myself when the court case was dismissed that Dr. Brothers just referenced. And yet I know that there are stories within this collection that are well beyond that. I can go through, and I may go through and share with you, a couple of stories that I just have to share them with you directly. I'm not going to do anything fancy putting it up on the board because it's difficult to imagine that people are in bondage already and other people are arguing about keeping them in bondage, and then those who are free. Let me give a realistic association to this. And all of you know the story of Solomon Northup and what all happened in order for him, a free man, having taken into bondage and then having to go to length at court to be released many, many years later. 12 years. That's a lot. That's a lot. Think about what happened to you in the last 12 years. The days, let's just look at the days. And this is a man who had accomplished a great deal as a professional, and then he's taken and treated like an animal, less than a human being, being told that that's what he was, and then having to go to court. And this is 12 years of him trying to get somebody to hear his story. And so we have situations like that. I'm deliberately doing a freelance just to pick out something that you could think about, just think about. So this one is an individual out of Louisiana and Catahoula, if I'm saying it correctly. For those of you in Louisiana, feel free to say so. I'm not embarrassed about it. And so this is Joseph M. Salabellis, petitions to be compensated for the death of a 7 or 8 year old slave boy named Washington. On July 22nd, 1845, Salabellis purchased Washington and several others, then residing with and under the charge of Richard G. Houghton. Salabellis and Houghton agreed that the slaves would continue to work for Houghton and that Houghton would take good care of them, take good care of them and deliver them to Salabellis. At the end of July, Houghton left his residence and directed his wife to place the slaves on a ferry at, quote, Little or Old River, end quote, and transport them to the Troy plantation on Black River. Houghton's wife did as directed, but Washington was sick at the time and died upon arrival at Walton's Ferry. Later that day, Houghton arrived at Walton's Ferry and transported the remaining slaves and the body of Washington to Salabellis plantation. Salabellis claims that it was Houghton's gross neglect and inhuman treatment that caused the boy's death, and he was therefore asked the court to order Houghton to pay $400 for the loss of the slave. Analyze it. Go ahead, analyze it, think about it. These are the types of documents that are chocked full in these records. And that is a sad and miserable situation. He's a child. He's a child. And the mere fact that these children are treated in ways that are unbearable to think about, but the monetary value attached to them for the financial well-being of the enslaved. It's nothing in there about the child and his family or connection to anybody, not even the name. How sad, how real, and how true this is. So the court argument is between the individual who was left as guardian of the purchased slaves to be delivered to the owner of the slave. And we have several names here to look at. We've provided a plantation name and an owner. So don't play the information cheap, because it has a lot of information in there that you can go to try to follow this person if by chance this location and the surnames are in your repertoire of ancestors' names. You want to do that. You want to look at that. You want to try to find out what else you can build your story on as well. The collection is rich, is all I can say. And it does require some attention. Let me see if I can find another one to share with you, because Dr. Brothers has given you the tools to go online and look at these. And I forgot to ask, and I'm going to ask this straight out to Dr. Brothers. Did you notice if the original transcripts were available on that? I can't remember.
No, not there.
Okay, so the original transcripts are available on microfilm, and you can look at those here at the library, at the Allen County Public Library here in Fort Wayne, Indiana. I wanted to share, let's see, we'll go with another one. Some of the, I have to tell you that some of the values that are in here just blow me away. This is out of South Carolina, for those of you who have ancestors in that area that might be beneficial. And this one is Newberry District, South Carolina. Thomas Briggs seeks an account of debts and injunctions to stop legal actions against him. In 1828, Briggs hired a slave named Winnie and household furniture to widow Sarah A. Walker, quote, for a nominal sum as mere an act of charity, end quote. Because Walker had a large family to support and was destitute, Walker did not return Winnie or the furniture on 1st of January 1929 when they were due. So Briggs took back Winnie in May of 1829. In September 1829, Walker enticed Winnie away from Briggs, kept her hidden for several months, and finally sold her to David Payne. I'm going to pause right there. Think about the name changes. Think about the name changes, and do we even know if that was Winnie's original name? Okay, so in 1830, Sarah Walker, quote, commenced an action of malicious persecution and false imprisonment, end quote, against Briggs and obtained a judgment of $1,000 in damages. Briggs asserts that Walker owes him $1,120 for Winnie's hire and sale value and for provisions that he gave her. He did not sue her for the debts because, quote, she was woefully and utterly insolvent, and he was unwilling to distress one in such necessitous circumstances, end quote. He asked that the court enjoin further proceedings on Walker's award until she accounts for her debt to him, and that the court reduce an award of an amount that she owes Briggs. Good Lord. So, did you know we were that important? So, I just have to say it like that. The amount of money and the prestige that was attached to bond for having people in bond to you, and they have the right to argue about your value, and this value is attached to their worth, not necessarily the worth of the enslaved person. But again, we are looking at name changes that could be attached to Winnie in this particular case. Doesn't really talk about location, but there may be some location changes as well. So you want to be mindful of the possibilities here as you look at these records. And they are valuable. They are valuable to our story. They are valuable to the individuals who may be descendants of dear Winnie. So we're looking at the court records for these owners, the surnames that are involved here. Walker, Briggs are two that we know of, but there's a strong possibility that there may be another one. Okay, so take a look at those records. Take the time to read the actual petition and the resolution to those petitions for the individuals that filed for these court cases. I would like to have taken time to give you multiple examples of enslaved individuals who actually acquired their freedom, but those are in here as well. I wanted to offer some diversity as well as to what's coming from the benefit of looking at the Anglo record, as well as the African-American experience under those records. I don't know, where are we time-wise? Okay, so Questions from the Zoom audience as well as in-house? Comments even?
Roberta, this is Anita.
I guess the question was, again, the case that I had shown you, it was dismissed. When a case is dismissed, it is in that case, there is no resolution for the person who petitioned, is what happens. When they dismiss the case, there's no finding. Unfortunately, now he may have done something else afterwards. You know, again, I've seen cases where it may have been dismissed, but brought up later on with more information and more evidence. So he remains in bondage. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that's what happens, unfortunately. And the key thing, when you mentioned that young guy who had passed away, in my family in Massachusetts, we had an 8-year-old who was stolen and sold down south. So it not only happened down south, people also went up north and again stole slaves and took them south. So this was roughly 1856, 1857 that occurred, and it was never found. I don't know. I have to go. You're talking about the fellow who stole the boat and then became I'm trying to figure when you said riverboat pilot. Okay. The question was, are there any records regarding a riverboat pilot? I'm not sure what you're referring to at this point in time. Yes, we did have, remember, an African American who, in fact, took his family and others and stole the riverboat and took it. He was a riverboat pilot across from this case Confederate territory to Union territory, and then later on he was actually made a Union pilot of that same boat. And post-Woods he ended up going into Congress, as a matter of fact. So okay, you can see what happened. So again, oh yeah. Now I don't know of any other. That's the only one that I'm aware of. Okay, what I have to do is, if you send me the information, I will. Okay, go ahead.
Let me say that to that regard, I have done some research on riverboats and steamboats, both used in the Civil War, those boats that converted into commercial boats following the Civil War. So if you have not actually researched the name of the steamboat, if you know the name of the steamboat that person actually piloted, then you can research that boat. They actually keep a history on those boats. There are records that you can go to as far as that is concerned because of licensing and category. Excuse me.
Please join us in the theater this afternoon for a performance of traditional Mexican dance by the Amanecer de Mexico Dance Troupe. The performance begins at 2:30 in the theater. Please join us in the theater this afternoon for performance of traditional Mexican dance by the Amanecer de Mexico Dance Troupe. The performance begins at 2:30 in the theater.
Sorry about that. That's the contract. So what I want to say is that when you look at the history of a particular boat, it does give you captain information on it, and you can usually follow up from there. So if you haven't done that, I would recommend doing that because it will give the history. And oftentimes, if it goes from military service, if it happens to be like that, or commercial service into military into commercial, it will tell the name change of that boat as well, or that ship.
Google the name.
Yeah, yeah. As Dr. Brother says, Google the name. The question coming to us right now: what resources do you recommend for the vote? Google. Google. I'll be honest with you, Google. You can do Civil War steamboats. You can do Civil War service ships. Prior to that, you can look at, there's a record of known slavers, the ships that were used for slaving. Depending on what area you're in, you'll probably get some pretty good records. I've done a lot of looking around in the Rhode Island area because my personal experience visiting there, and because of the surname connections with the slave trade, and just being curious, like I tend to be, about records that may be important to African-American genealogy and enslavement. I hope that gives you some guidance.
There's also ship registry.
Yes.
Even at the same time for the ship registry.
Yeah, ship registries, Dr. Brothers is saying that you can check that as well. And a lot of times it may be regional that you might want to look at because of where you're looking for your people, because we know that slave trade along the eastern coast coming from north after the abolition of slavery, coming in from out of the trade, the international slave trade being abolished, I believe the year is 1807. So after that time, there was more trade taking place within the country. So it was coming down the eastern seaboard into the southern area of the country. So you can look at ships, from certain areas. I think that's about as concise as I can get without having that right here in front of me. But I've done a lot of searching around like that as well. Is there? Oh, it looks like we have another one. Can you recommend sources to learn who might have traveled on the Underground Railroad? That's a hot one. That is a hot one. Traveling on the Underground Railroad. Records that might be available to you has a lot to do more with destination. Obviously they didn't sign up for where they were leaving, that is where they arrived. So I would concentrate in Pennsylvania records for starters. That's a prime location. So looking at what records they would have with the Underground Railroad arriving with them. Individual records that are involved, the historic names, Sills, Frederick Douglass himself, and there's another one that is Garrison records. Those are records that you might want to look at, but I would look at Pennsylvania records for the Underground Railroad arrivals. Can you recommend sources to learn who might have traveled? That's a repeat question. Anybody else? Oh. Our appreciation coming to us from Los Angeles. Thank you very much. I hope that what we've shared today with you, if nothing else, has titillated your curiosity to know a little bit more about what's out there, because there's a lot of records out there that we don't know about the way we should. And those of us who know about them need to be a little bit more forthcoming on what could be shared to help the rest of us. And that's my goal, my personal goal as chairwoman of this organization, is to share both with my local staff of board members and for individuals that I can share things with. I have the benefit of having been employed here at Allen County Public Library in the genealogy department for several years, and my relationship is strong. I try to revisit things that I had the privilege of actually inputting into the collection here. And that's one of the reasons why this particular collection stood out for me. I actually did that collection when it came in. So I know that there's a lot of people that don't get into it. It was a long time coming onto the database, and it's something that you should look at. It's just that simple. And I hope to find some more jewels to share with you, and that you will benefit from them. And if you don't have your question packaged today, please feel free to communicate with us via email to our society, and that is call letters are AAGSFW@gmail.com. And we also receive questions on our Facebook page as well, and that is AAGSFW as well. Okay. Anybody else comments or suggestions? We always take suggestions. If you'd like to have a suggested presentation, we love to hear that.
Interesting that you mentioned Pennsylvania. It's my dad's family from, and my great uncle ran part of the Underground Railroad going through Southwest Pennsylvania, coming up to West Virginia, through Waynesburg, Pennsylvania, and going up that way.
Mhm.
So if somebody has a name of a relative, I know of, a bunch of names of people who came through there. I don't individually know where they came from, but came through there because some of them even stayed there.
And this is in Waynesboro.
Waynesburg, Pennsylvania, Greene County, Pennsylvania, about 20 miles south of Pittsburgh, right on at the corner of the West Virginia, Pennsylvania line. And then they went on up, and some did go to Canada, and they came back down also.
I'm gonna do the best I can. Okay, we have a colleague here in the studio or in the meeting room sharing some information about his ancestorship, being involved with the Underground Railroad, and referencing the location of Waynesboro, Pennsylvania, as an Underground Railroad transitional location. And if individuals they have some information about individuals who came through that area, is I'm understanding it? So if you have some possibilities that you would like for him to check, please forward that information to us. I don't know if you want to be bombarded directly, or you like to have those routed through us.
Well, I don't mind. Actually, some of it's online. So if you search Underground Railroad, Pennsylvania, you can see some of that. If there was a name I don't mind.
Okay. Okay. Dr. Davidson is visiting us from Maryland. And so Dr. Davis is in-house in the audience, and he is perfectly willing to receive inquiries about this location and to provide we can send website information that he is going to share with us, where you can actually check names that have been recorded as coming through Waynesboro, Pennsylvania. Okay. Yeah, Waynesboro.
Yeah, names of people there. The people there might know.
Yeah. Okay. So it's nonetheless a rich sharing that he's offering to do. So if you're interested in receiving that information, please respond to us in the chat, and we'll get that back out to you. Okay. Is there anything else that anybody would like to recommend or comment on? Yeah, and topics for future presentations is always welcome. So if you have one of those, please make sure you put that in the chat as well, or email us, or say it now. Okay. Okay. And another comment from my Madam Secretary is that if you want a handout from today's presentation, please let us know in the chat. I think that does it. I thank each and every one of you for joining us today. I hope there was something that we shared that was beneficial to you, thought-provoking, encouraging, giving voice to the ancestors. Please continue your search. Again, my name is Roberta Ridley, Chairwoman of the African American Genealogical Society, and Dr. Al Brothers, Vice Chair, who has presented this wealth of information to you. Thank you so